There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about the things which are beyond the power of our will. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. If you were distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. All cruelty springs from weakness. Know you not that a good man does nothing for appearance sake, but for the sake of having done right. It does not matter what you bear, but how you bear it. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you have been but will welcome you, based on the virtues you have lived by. If there are gods but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone, but will have lived a noble life, that will live on in the memories of your loved ones. If you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to what others think, you will never be rich. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient. For he that is so, wants nothing. The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. Riches are a cause of evil, not because of themselves, they do any evil, but because they goad men on, so that they are ready to do evil. How does it help to make troubles heavier by bemoaning them? When someone wrongs, you ask yourself what made him do it. Once you understand his concept of good and evil, you feel sorry for him, and cease to either be amazed or angry. If his concept is similar to yours, then you will be bound to forgive him, since you would have acted as he did in similar circumstances. But if you do not share his ideas of good and evil, then you should find it easier to overlook the wrongs of someone who is confused and in a moral muddle. What is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bees. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to with the same weapons of reason, which today arm you against the present. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. He can anger you only when you permit yourself to be disturbed by him. Circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself. Don't seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and all will be well with you. God has entrusted me with myself. No man is free who is not master of himself. A man should live so that his happiness shall depend as little as possible on external things. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean, in a drop. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things. Thus death is nothing terrible, else it would have appeared so to Socrates. But the terror consists in our notion of death, that it is terrible. When therefore we are hindered, or disturbed, or grieved, let us never impute it to others, but to ourselves, that is, to our own views. It is the action of an uninstructed person to reproach others for his own misfortunes, of one entering upon instruction to reproach himself, and of one perfectly instructed, to approach neither others or himself. Nothing to my way of thinking is a better proof of a well-ordered mind, than a man's ability to stop just where he is, and pass some time in his own company. A gift consists not in what is done, or given, but in the intention of the giver, or doer. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals, in all that you desire. If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head, of how much time has already gone by you. Take no heed. You squander time as if you drew from a full and abundant supply, though all the while that day which you bestow on some person or thing is perhaps your last. Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. How much time he gains, who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, or but only at what he does himself, to make it just and holy. Begin each day by telling yourself, I shall be met with interference. Ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will and selfishness. All of them, due to the offender's ignorance, of what is good or evil. But for my part, I have long perceived the nature of good, and its nobility, the nature of evil and its meanness, and also the nature of the culprit himself, who is my brother, not in the physical sense but as a fellow creature, similarly endowed, with reason and a share of the divine. Therefore, none of those things can injure me, for nobody can implicate me in what is degrading, neither can I be angry with my brother, or fall foul of him, for he and I were born to work together like a man's 2 hands, feet or eyelids, or the upper and lower rows of his teeth. To obstruct each other is against nature's law, and what is irritation or aversion, but a form of obstruction? If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone. Nothing to my way of thinking is a better proof of a well-ordered mind, than a man's ability to stop just where he is, and pass some time in his own company. Apply reason to difficulties. Harsh circumstances can be softened. Narrow limits can be widened, and burdensome things can be made to press less severely on those who bear them cleverly. There are misfortunes which strike the sage without incapacitating him. Of course, such as physical pain, infirmity, the loss of friends, or children, or the catastrophes of his country, when it is devastated by war. I grant that he is sensitive to these things, for we do not impute to him the hardness of rock, or of iron. There is no virtue in putting up with that, which one does not feel. And they say that there is this difference between the mind of a foolish man and that of a wise man. That the foolish man thinks that such visions are, in fact, as dreadful and terrifying as they appear, with the original impact of them on his mind, and by his assent he approves of such ideas as if they were rightly to be feared and confirms them. But the wise man, after being affected for a short time and slightly in his color and expression, does not assent, but retains the steadfastness and strength of the opinion which he has always had about visions of this kind, namely that they are in no wise to be feared but excite terror by a false appearance and vain alarms. Don't you know life is like a military campaign? One must serve on watch, another in reconnaissance, another on the front line. So it is for us, each person's life is a kind of battle, and a long and varied one too. You must keep watch, like a soldier, and do everything commanded. You have been stationed in a key post, not some lowly place, and not for a short time but for life. For what prevents us from saying that the happy life is to have a mind that is free, lofty, fearless, and steadfast, a mind that is placed beyond the reach of fear, beyond the reach of desire, that counts virtue the only good, baseness the only evil, and all else but a worthless mass of things which come and go without increasing or diminishing the highest good, and neither subtracting any part from the happy life nor add any part to it. A man thus grounded must, whether he wills or not, necessarily be attended by constant cheerfulness and a joy that is deep in, issues from deep within. Since he finds delight in his own resources and desires no joys greater than his inner joys. The chief task in life is simply this, to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself, which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I actually control, where then do I look for good and evil, not to uncontrollable externals but within myself to the choices that are my own. One ought to seek out virtue for its own sake without being influenced by fear or hope, or by any external influence. Moreover, that in that does happiness consist. What is your art to be good, and how is this accomplished well, except by general principles, some about the nature of the universe, and others about the proper constitution of man? In our control is the most beautiful and important thing. The thing because of which, even the God himself is happy, namely the proper use of our impressions. We must concern ourselves absolutely with the things that are under our control, and entrust the things not in our control to the universe. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm? It is the act of an ill-instructed man to blame others for his own bad condition. It is the act of one who has begun to be instructed to lay the blame on himself, and of one whose instruction is completed neither to blame another nor himself. One who knows not who he is and to what end he was born, what kind of world is this, and with whom he is associated therein, one who cannot distinguish good and evil, beauty in founders, truth and falsehood, will never follow reason in shaping his desires, and impulses, and repulsions, nor yet in assent, denial or suspension of judgment, but will in one word go about deaf and blind, thinking himself to be somewhat when he is in truth of no account. Is there anything new in all this? Is not this ignorance the cause of all the mistakes and mischances of men since the human race began? We are all chained to fortune. The chain of one is made of gold, and wide, while that's of another is short and rusty. But what difference does it make? The same prison surrounds all of us, and even those who have bound others are bound themselves, unless perchance you think that a chain on the left side is lighter. Honors bind one man, wealth another, nobility oppresses some, humility others. Some are held in subjection by an external power while others obey the tyrant within. Banishments keep some in place, the priesthood others. All life is slavery, therefore each one must accustom himself to his own condition, and complain about it as little as possible, and lay hold to whatever good is to be found near him. Nothing is so bitter that a calm mind cannot find comfort in it. Small tablets, because of the writer's skill, have often served for many purposes, and a clever arrangement has often made a very narrow piece of land habitable. A commitment to justice in your own acts, which means thought in action resulting in the common good, what you were born to do. If you were distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. These reasonings are unconnected. I am richer than you, therefore I am better. I am more eloquent than you, therefore I am better. The connection is rather this: I am richer than you, therefore my property is greater than yours. I am more eloquent than you, therefore my style is better than yours. But you after all are neither property nor style. If you have given way to anger, be sure that over and above the evil involved therein, you have strengthened the habit and added fuel to the fire. If overcome by a temptation of the flesh, do not reckon it a single defeat, but that you have also strengthened your dissolute habits. Habits and faculties are necessarily affected by the corresponding acts. One who has had fever even when it has left him is not in the same condition of health as before, unless indeed his cure is complete. Something of the same sort is true also of diseases of the mind. Behind there remains a legacy of traces and of blisters, and unless these are effectually erased, subsequent blows on the same spot will produce no longer mere blisters, but sores. If you do not wish to be prone to anger, do not feed the habit, give it nothing which may tend to its increase. At first keep quiet and count the days when you were not angry. I used to be angry every day, then every other day, next every 2, next every 3 days. And if you succeed in passing 30 days, sacrifice to the gods in thanksgiving. Men do not care how nobly they live, but only how long. although it is within the reach of every man to live nobly, but within no man's power to live long. Until we have begun to go without them, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are. We've been using them not because we needed them but because we had them. If you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential. What the logos of a social being requires, and in the requisite way, which brings a double satisfaction to do less better, because most of what we say and do is not essential. If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more tranquility. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. In general, any method of discipline applied to the body, which tends to modify its desires, or potions, are good for ascetic ends, but if done for display, they betray at once a man who keeps an eye on outward show, who has an ulterior purpose and is looking for spectators to shout, "Oh, what a great man this is!" Why, Apollonius so well said, "If you are bent upon a little private discipline, wait till you are choking with heat one day, then take a mouthful of cold water and spit it out again, and tell no man." A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. For mankind, evil is injustice, and cruelty and indifference to a neighbor's trouble, while virtue is brotherly love, and goodness, and justice, and beneficence and concern for the welfare of your neighbor. He who is running a race ought to endeavor and strive to the utmost of his ability to come off victor, but it is utterly wrong for him to trip up his competitor, or to push him aside. So in life it is not unfair for one to seek for himself what may accrue to his benefit, but it is not right to take it from another. They lose the day in expectation of the night, and the night in fear of the dawn. The courageous in exile, or at home, is fearless in the face of all such threats. For that reason they've the courage to say what they think equally, at home or in exile. Philosophy does not promise to secure anything external for a man, otherwise it would be admitting something that lies beyond its proper subject matter, for as the material of the carpenter is wood, and that of statuary bronze, so the subject matter of the art of living is each person's own life. My advice is really this: what we hear the philosophers saying, and what we find in their writings, should be applied in our pursuit of the happy life. We should hunt out their helpful pieces of teaching and the spirited and noble-minded sayings which are capable of immediate practical application, not far-fetched or archaic expressions, or extravagant metaphors and figures of speech, and learn them so well that the words become works. No one to my mind lets humanity down quite so much as those who study philosophy as if it were a sort of commercial skill, and then proceeds to live in a quite different manner to the one they tell other people to live. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals and not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Where then do I look for good and evil? Not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself to the choices that are my own. True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, for he that is so, wants nothing. The greatest blessings of mankind within us, and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will, then your life will flow well. If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake, or looking at things from the wrong perspective. I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone. If you accomplish something good with hard work, the labor passes quickly, but the good endures. If you do something shameful in pursuit of pleasure, the pleasure passes quickly, but the shame endures. Be tolerant with others, and strict with yourself. No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have, and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have. You will earn the respect of all, if you begin by earning the respect of yourself. Don't expect to encourage good deeds in people conscious of your own misdeeds. The greatest discovery of any generation is that a human can alter his life by altering his attitude. Excellence is never an accident, it is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. We are more often frightened than heard, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Man conquers the world by conquering himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. You should live in such a way that there is nothing which you could not as easily tell your enemy as keep to yourself. Waking up to who you are requires letting go of who you imagine yourself to be. The high-minded man must care more for the truth than for what people think. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more than we say. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Don't promise twice what you can do once. A man who has committed a mistake and doesn't correct it is committing another mistake. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. Remember 2 things: 1, that everything has always been the same and keeps recurring, and it makes no difference whether you see the same things recur in 100 years, or 200, or in an infinite period. 2, that the longest lived, and those who will die soonest, lose the same thing. The present is all they can give up, since that is all you have, and what you do not have, you cannot lose. Ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather he must recognize that it is he who is asked. In a word, each man is questioned by life. And he can only answer to life by answering for his own life. To life he can only respond by being responsible. No amount of anxiety makes any difference to anything that is going to happen. The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. I begin to speak only when I'm certain what I'll say isn't better left unsaid. All Hellenistic schools seem to define wisdom in approximately the same terms, first and foremost, as a state of perfect peace of mind. From this viewpoint, philosophy appears as a remedy for human worries, anguish and misery brought about, for the cynics by social constraints and conventions, for the Epicureans by the quest for false pleasures, for the Stoics by the pursuit of pleasure and egotistic self-interest, and for the skeptics by false opinions, whether or not they lay claim to the Socratic heritage. All Hellenistic philosophers agreed with Socrates that human beings are plunged into misery, anguish, and evil, because they exist in ignorance. Evil is to be found, not within things, but in the value judgments, which people bring to bear upon things. People can therefore be cured of their ills, only if they are persuaded to change their value judgments, and in this sense all these philosophies wanted to be therapeutic. Simplicity, patience, compassion, these 3 are your greatest treasures. Simple in actions and thoughts, you return to the source of being patient with both friends and enemies. You accord with the way things are, compassionate towards yourself. You reconcile all beings in the world. Taoism is the art of being in the world, for it deals with the present ourselves. It is in us that God meets with nature, and yesterday parts from tomorrow. The present is the moving infinity, the legitimate sphere of the relative. Relativity seeks adjustment. Adjustment is art. The art of life lies in a constant readjustment to our surroundings. Be content with what you have, rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Let your eyes see what they see not, what others want you to see. Let your ears hear what they naturally hear, not what others want you to hear. Let your mouth speak your mind freely, and not be constrained by other people's approval or disapproval. Let your mind think what it wants to think, and not let other people's demands dictate your thoughts. if your senses and your mind are not allowed to do what they want to do. Naturally, you are denying them their rights when you cannot think, sense, feel, or act freely. Then your body and mind are injured. Break these oppressions, and you will cultivate life. Be careful what you water your dreams with. Water them with worry and fear, and you will produce weeds that choke the life from your dreams. Water them with optimism and solutions, and you will cultivate success. Always be on the lookout for ways to turn a problem into an opportunity for success. Always be on the lookout for ways to nurture your dream. Strength should always be complemented by softness. If you resist too much, you will break. Thus the strong person knows when to use strength, and when to yield, and good fortune and disaster depend on whether you know how and when to yield. Those who do not know how to suffer are the worst off. There are times when the only thing we can do is to bear our troubles until a better day. To solve a problem, you need to remove the cause, not the symptom.